The first leg of our Around the World in 40 Days adventure took us from our home in Costa Rica, through Miami, then on an over 14-hour flight to Doha, Qatar. Luckily, we flew in one of the Qatar Airways Q suite planes where we had an entire section with walls that came up around us and turned into a double bed. Best flight ever. And some of the best vegetarian airline food ever.
We arrived in Doha around 6 in the evening, and the hotel had a car and driver waiting. The city was still aglow with the lights and sounds of the recently ended World Cup, and also our discovery that we had arrived after sunset during Ramadan. We were driven to the Tivoli Hotel in the Souk Waqif, the ancient traditional market that started centuries ago because of a well, and had fallen into disrepair, but has now been renovated, and is the cultural center in the city.
Ramadan in Qatar is very traditional. You do not eat from sunrise to sunset. At sunset you eat the first meal called iftar, and then early in the morning before sunrise you eat sohor. After sunset, the city is alive with families and people filling the souk, eating and enjoying the cooler night air. It felt like a Christmas market with the crowds and children's rides and shopping. Vendors sold everything from ice cream to a traditional savory crepe filled with egg called rigag, cooked by burqa-covered women in temporary stalls in the street. We watched but did not have the guts to try them. Vendors sold balloons and camel rides for the kids. You can find anything in the souk, from gold to clothes to rugs, food to Christmas souvenirs. The counterpoint and contradictions of this part of the world make your head hurt. For us, it brought back memories of Istanbul.
We also visited the Falcon Souk, where there is a falcon hospital and shops for falconry, which is still a huge sport in Qatar, but it saddened us to see these magnificent raptors in captivity. One of the reasons to stay at the Tivoli Hotel is that it has one of the few rooftop restaurants in the souk, with an amazing view. We had a delicious vegetarian iftar, with non-alcoholic drinks, while overlooking the Corniche towards the almost garishly lit new city. Surprisingly, not jet-lagged, we headed to bed as the full moon shone over the National Islamic Center.
We headed out before dawn for some urban birding, after discovering you cannot get anything to eat or drink past 3 a.m. We walked past the only other creatures that were awake at this time, camels. The camel stable near the souk was filled with them, all pampered in their nightcoats. We walked by the National Parliament building complex and the National Mosque. We continued walking towards Al Bida, the largest city park in Doha. After sunrise, the scene turned post-apocalyptic. No one was in the park, no one in the streets, no cars on the road. It seems nothing really happens in the day during Ramadan. We had the park almost to ourselves. The only people around the park were workers, all foreign. After almost getting arrested for photography with a too big camera, we enjoyed the park and the birds.
We walked through the park to the Corniche and walked along the waterfront back to the hotel for breakfast, on the way seeing who owned the camels, as a royal camel troop paraded around the National Legislative Building. Afterwards, we took a taxi over to the new Museum of Islamic Art, an IMP-designed wonder on the water. It was a fabulous museum, with art and ancient books and some of the earliest math and science writings, early astrolabes, and even a 14th century book on astronomy that was open to a description of a solar eclipse. By the time we got back to the souk, it was time for the crowds to start arriving for one of the, unknown to us, Ramadan traditions, the iftar cannon. Going back to the 16th century, a cannon is fired at sunset to announce the end of the day and the beginning of suhoor. A huge crowd gathered, with gifts of food and water handed out to people, giving alms being another of the 5 pillars of Islam. Live TV coverage of the iftar cannon was there, and the modern, US-designed, cannon did not disappoint. Then all the water and food packs were torn open as the suhoor feeding frenzy started.
To allow the crowds to abate from restaurants, we went over to the Pearl Statue and the Dhow Harbor. Dhow are the traditional fishing and trading boats of the Arabian Peninsula. Many are now for hire to take tourists sightseeing around the bay. We found one that was supposed to be for a crowd, but being right after sunset in Ramadan, no one else showed up, except a few Germans that wanted to use the boat as a water taxi to the other side. We had a wonderful dhow cruise around the Corniche all to ourselves. We returned to the souk and had reservations at an Iranian restaurant I was told about. It was the most lavish restaurant we have ever seen, with all the crystal and jewels to decorate the restaurant brought from Iran. Another amazing, vegetarian, meal topped off our short visit to Doha.
The hotel limousine returned us to the airport for a 2 a.m. morning flight on Easter Sunday. We flew in an Airbus A380 that was so big it had an upstairs lounge in it. They even supplied us with a candy Easter egg. Next stop, Perth, Western Australia.